Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of how to answer the poetry question. This is for the Ted Hughes anthology for CIE paper 1. So let's just quickly recap what did we do in part 1. So in part 1 we looked at how to interpret and deconstruct the question. We looked at how to use the poem and how to analyse the poem in time conditions and to make sure your analysis is detailed, developed and relevant. We annotated for a range of techniques, but we're not just technique spotting, so we also added some good annotation there in terms of the effects of each of those techniques or the language choices. And then we brainstormed ideas in response to the question and made a plan that will help us with the structure and the coherence of our response. So just want to bring you back quickly to the assessment objectives. And I'm not going to go back through the assessment objectives because I did cover these in lesson 1, but just want to show you how the assessment objectives kind of manifest themselves within the marking criteria. So if we just have a look at level 8 here, in terms of your quotations, we have here demonstrates knowledge by incorporating well-selected reference. So that means that you've picked the best quotations that you can find to reinforce your point, and that you make sure that you pick quotations not only that are relevant but that you can say a lot about, because we want to be able to talk about them with flair. You want to show that you've been quite selective and quite purposeful in your choices. Let's have a look here at AO2. So remember, AO2 is all about the poem, understanding all the different facets of the poem. So sustains, now that's an interesting word. Sustains means that it's continued all the way through your essay, which again is why it's always a good idea to have a plan in front of you, keeps you on track. Sustains a critical understanding of the text, showing individuality and insight. And this is where your independent response comes in. Don't be afraid to include your own interpretations of the poem, the meaning, the message, and the quotations that you use. So we have our AO3 here, which is to do with the author's the poet's methods, and it's to do with this range of language, structure and form. So respond sensitively and in considerable detail to the way the writer achieves his or her effects. Now this idea of considerable detail, so obviously this means that you have to have enough quotations in there to talk about so that you can go into them in enough detail, but also, like I said to you in lesson 1, we're looking at how you can double up on the techniques in a quotation and also how you can layer your analysis. Saying more than one thing about a quotation really shows that you can talk in detail about how an effect is achieved. So a writer is not always going to just think about one element of language or structure. Everything works together, and you really want to show how enjambment can support a metaphor or caesura can highlight personification. Really, we want to talk about how all of these things work together, and you need to show that you understand that. And again, this word sustain. So for the top level here, everything is about every single paragraph or every single section of your essay should be developed in the same way and to the same level. So it sustains personal and evaluative engagement with the task and the text. So again, your personal response to the question, show that you are creating your own personal response. You have your own ideas and interpretations, but also that you're evaluating. Don't be afraid to talk about how effective something is and why it's effective. Why do you think that personification was chosen for stanza 1 but not in the final stanza? Why do you think this particular word was chosen for this line? Why not a different word? So always think about the choices and really evaluate the effects of those choices made by the writer. Okay, so this was the plan that I made last lesson. So we've seen this before, and I explained we have 3 quotations, 2 quotations, 3 quotations. But I've also got my notes down here. This will help me when I'm writing up my essay, because I'll be ticking these off as I go. And I will not be moving on to the second point unless I've spoken about as many of these things as I can. And if you notice, I've got more than one thing that I can say about each quotation, and that brings us back to here, the considerable detail in which the way in which the writer achieves his or her effects. So I am layering, I'm doubling up on what I can say about each quotation, and a good plan will remind you to do this as you're writing. It can be quite stressful. Once you start writing your essay, you're trying to get to the end, you're trying to finish, you're trying to make sure that you don't run out of time. So a good plan will just keep you focused. So this is just my suggestion for your essay structure. Obviously use it alongside anything that your teacher has already given you or anything that you find works particularly well for you. So just give a very brief introduction. So just quickly what the poem is about. Again, my magic box from lesson 1 will help you here. My box that kind of gives you the overview of what it's about. So you've got the summary, you've got the themes, you've got the message. Try and use the keywords in the question. Give an overview of what you will talk about. Also kind of include some of the keywords from your main ideas. So these are your main ideas, these are your own keywords. Remember, this is what you're proving. So your keywords here are the ones that you will be using throughout your paragraph. So you set up the idea that the wind is attacking the landscape, then you must return to this word attack throughout this paragraph. So for each of these different quotations, you're showing how the wind is attacking in the landscape through these. Same here, you're showing how the wind is powerful or how we are vulnerable. So do not forget your own keywords within your essay. What are you trying to prove? Don't forget to use the poet's name here. And you can also identify some aspects of form. So if there's something particularly interesting, if it's a dramatic monologue, or if you think, if it's a sonnet, or if you think there is rhyming couplets that you can comment on. So you can sometimes talk about form here, and then it just shows the examiner that you understand. Then you've got your 3 different sections. I put here peel just because I think that's probably what some of you are familiar with, peel or petal or your own version. But actually, you will even see from my own example that peel is a rough guide. Please don't think that you have to stick to it religiously, because if you do stick to it religiously, you may find that it restricts you slightly. So really, if you are using peel, just think about peel as a guide for what you can include, not necessarily the exact order of how you may include things. So for example, the link can actually be anywhere within your section or your paragraph, doesn't have to be at the end. Then the conclusion, if you've got time. So what have you proven in terms of the question? What have you learned from the poem? What have you learned in terms of the big ideas? What do you think Hughes is trying to teach you or tell you? Think back to the keyword from the question and think about what the message of the poem is with response to that question. And then I've given you an idea here of how you can structure each point or each section, depending on what you want to call them. And as you can see, it kind of deviates a lot from peel in terms of there's a lot more going on in there. So again, yes, use peel as a guide, but don't feel that you must be restricted by it. And I've just gone back to these. I did use these in lesson 1 just to show you some of the questions that help you develop your analysis. So at this point, I just want to let you know about the Microlessons series that I also have on YouTube. So if you do feel that at this point that yes, you understand what I'm saying, but you are a little bit worried about how you are going to express your ideas fully in an essay format, don't worry. I've tried to kind of create a video for every target that I've ever given to my own pupils across the years I've been teaching, but also the different things that people email me and ask me about and say, oh, I don't know how to embed my quotations, or I'm really struggling to know how to analyse a technique, or you mentioned layering in one of your lessons, how do I do that? So actually I cover everything that I can think of in terms of what you may need in terms of help for literature. So do kind of have a look at the micro lessons because they will help you with all the different skills that I talk about, but also that I'm going to show you myself. Okay, so let's look at an example. So we're just going to look at a section from an essay. So this is the response to the essay question we have here, and it is using this particular planning document that we have. So this is, we're going to go through just the introduction, and then we're going to go through point 1, which is here. So this is a success criteria for your introduction, and I'm just going to go through and just highlight where we've met that. So we're going to start with the name of the poem and the name of the poet. So Wind by Ted Hughes is a poem about the strength and power of nature. So we've given a brief overview, show that we understand. And again, this is just what I've taken from the notes that I wrote down in lesson 1. The reader is thrust into a hostile and aggressive environment. Note the key words here. These key words are going to appear in my essay. The reader is thrust into a hostile and aggressive environment along with the speaker, who vividly, so note how we are using the keyword from the question, describes not only the impact of the wind on the landscape, but also on their home. Again, more information about what happens, the story of the poem. The use of first person, so we've identified an element of form here, but we're also going to give a quick overview of what the effect of that is, just very, very quickly. The use of first person enables the reader to feel as though they are too experiencing this natural terror. In addition, the use of first person also makes the effect of the wind more personal by showing how small and insignificant we are when we're at its mercy. Now this actually gives an overview of what I'm going to talk about in section 3. As well as being a record of the awe and terror created by the storm, so nice transitional phrase here to link to the next section, it could also be argued that this poem serves as a metaphor for the tumultuous and sometimes painful nature of relationships. So I'm showing that there is a different interpretation here to this poem. So maybe it's not just about nature, not just about the weather, maybe it's also a metaphor for relationships. And I could embed this into one of my sections down here, possibly this last one. So as you can see, we've kind of hit all the different success criteria. It's not overly long, just a few sentences will do. Okay, and here we have the first section. So this, if we just remind ourselves, is the wind attacks the landscape. So I've turned that into a full point sentence, so a full topic sentence. And then you will see how I've used the different quotations to reinforce this point. Okay, so we have a checklist here. So I've color coordinated it so that you can just see exactly how this particular example is meeting all of the different things required for the assessment objectives, but also for the mark scheme, just to show that you've got a very good understanding of the poem, but also that you're sustaining that all the way through. And this really is linking to that sustaining your ideas. So orange here is relevant point that shows understanding, and it's consistent focus on the point and the question. So the question is about vivid impressions and the weather and also its effects. And the point is the strength of the wind as it attacks the landscape. So as I said to you earlier, you really must return to your own keywords in your question throughout. And you can see how many times I've done that. So how many times we have orange here just shows how many different ways in which I've gone back to my point. I'm showing how I'm proving my point. I'm showing how the quotations are relevant to my point. And what I suggest you do is you highlight the keywords from your own point on your planning document, just so they think, right, okay, I need to keep referring back to the word attack. I need to keep proving how that quotation shows the landscape is attacking. So that will really help you in terms of sustaining your focus on the task. We've got evidence that's introduced and embedded. Again, this is a skill that I cover in my micro lessons, so don't just throw your quotations in and try not to start a sentence with them, and try not to kind of leave them dangling there by themselves. Red is wherever we've named a technique. Like I said, we're not about technique spotting, but you do want to show that you understand the methods that have been used. And you'll notice that whenever I do mention a technique, it is paired with the green, which is the analysis. So every time we have red, we have some kind of analysis that's attached to it or some kind of interpretation. Yellow is language choice. So where you can zoom in on a word, so you don't just have to talk about personification, you can also talk about a word that helps to create that image. Again, that's something that I talk about in my micro lessons when I talk about how you really analyse imagery. Green is whenever there is analysis of a technique or interpretation of the effect. Italics is the effect on the reader. And green here is writer intention. You'll notice there isn't any context because there wasn't any relevant context that I thought I could use for this particular section of the essay. So I'm not just going to tag it on or bolt it onto the end of a paragraph unless it's going to help me. And then I've got these added extras, and these help you with your AO4. These help you with how you formulate your response and how you express your ideas. So we've got academic phrases that help you to develop but also add some sophistication to your essay. Connectors to show how you are linking and developing. And we've also got linking phrases and effective transitions. Now, these do make your writing much more sophisticated, but they also show how everything is tied together. It shows how you are developing your response and adding detail rather than just going through a range of different points one by one. Everything is flowing together and showing that you understand how everything is tied together. Hughes has not just created random stanzas and used random techniques. There's a method behind everything. Everything is joined. So let's have a look. Hughes effectively depicts the strength of the wind as it attacks the landscape. In stanza 1, so we're introducing and embedding because we're saying where it is. In stanza 1, Hughes vividly, so we've got a reference back to the question up here, describes how the wind is stampeding the field. So it's embedded, it's part of our sentence. The use of zoomorphism exaggerates the action of the wind and is reminiscent of a herd of wild animals. So we've explained what the effect is, but we've also taken it further to show that we understand the image that's being created. Through the use of this image, so again, we've got our technique here, Hughes is able to highlight, academic phrase, the ferocity of the wind as well as the destruction it leaves behind. So these do refer back to my point. So my point is about the strength of the wind and the fact that it attacks the landscape. Now, ferocity and destruction link back to strength and this idea of it attacking the landscape. So you don't always have to repeat the exact same words. You can use words that are linked to those words, or synonyms in fact. This idea of destruction is accurately revealed through the verb stampeding. So one way of transitioning is by thinking about a keyword that you used in the previous sentence and pulling that into the next one to show how you are continuing this idea. This idea of destruction is accurately revealed through the verb stampeding, so here I'm zooming in on language, which suggests that something is being crushed or destroyed underfoot, so good understanding of the connotations and what it suggests within the poem itself. In addition, so shows that I'm still on the same quotation, I'm still on the same idea, but now I'm going to take it further. So in addition, the animal imagery further highlights the unpredictable nature of the wind and reinforces not only its strength, but its natural dominance over the landscape. So lots of interpretation of meaning here, and again, going back to our keywords in the question with strength. This dominance is transformed into a threat of violence in stanza 2. So again, we've pulled this idea of dominance into the next sentence to show how we are taking it further, and now we're showing how this is developed. So dominance is now turned into violence in stanza 2, so we're introducing the next quotation and it's embedded here, as Hughes reveals how the wind wielded blade light. The use of alliteration in wind wielded accurately adds to the rhythm of the line. So here now we're talking about alliteration, but we're also talking about rhythm, which is form. So this is where I'm doubling up again. Hughes has expertly, so good academic phrase here, used a sound device as a way of forcing the reader's pace as they read the line. Now this is both analysis and interpretation, but also effect on the reader, because we're talking about what they are actually being forced to do. So Hughes has done this. This is the effect he's having on us. Forces the reader's pace as they read the line to match the strength, going back to my own keyword up here, and speed of the wind as it moves through the landscape. In addition, the use of enjambment, so look at the many different layers that we've got here. This is where we're hitting level 8, talking about the quotations and the methods in detail. The enjambment emphasises the increase in energy as the wind builds up speed and unleashes its dominance over its surroundings. Furthermore, Hughes' use of personification through the word wielded, so many different layers. Just think about how many things I'm saying about one quotation. And all of this is from the plan, so the plan really helps, because all I do is I tick off the different techniques as I talk about them and think, okay, well, I've spoken about alliteration, I've spoken about enjambment, now I want to talk about personification. As the word wielded, so now I'm zooming in on a word, positions the wind as an adversary as it attacks. So we've gone back to the point up here. As it attacks its surroundings with the weapon-like blade light. Could be argued, so academic phrase, that through the use of personification, Hughes is asserting the power of the wind in a way that we can understand. Furthermore, so we're adding more to this now, so the connective shows that, by making this attack, so we've gone back to our own point, by making this attack on the environment seem more tangible for the reader, Hughes is also allowing us, so here we've got an effect on the reader, to feel the fear evoked by such an image. This idea of power and conflict, so again we're going back to our own point, is further strengthened in stanza 4 as Hughes depicts how a black back gull bent like an iron bar slowly. Here we can clearly see the effects of this attack as the wind's power as an adversary has disfigured and transformed the body of the bird. Hughes' use of consonants, so we've got a sound device here, so we're talking about something else, we're layering again. Across these two lines lends a sinister tone, so our interpretation of the effect of that, and not only reflects the brute force of the wind, so again this links back to strength, but also its ruthless nature. This is now also our interpretation as well as linking back to our own point. So see how we're constantly proving how what we're saying is relevant. We're constantly coming back to our own point. and this is sustained all the way through this section. It is clear that Hughes's aim, so here we're now focusing on the writer's intention, is to show the vulnerability of the landscape as the wind not only tears through the scenery but also terrorises everything in its path. So we come back to our own point right at the very end. And if you notice what I was saying about peels and the structure, so the link usually is effect on the reader and author intention. But if you notice, I've got effect on the reader just peppered throughout this whenever I think it's relevant, whenever I think it helps my argument. So that's why I'm saying don't necessarily feel that peel is there to restrict you. Just do whatever you think is necessary and include as much detail as you can wherever you think it is relevant. So my final tips for you: clear points using the language from the question or synonyms. Choose relevant and interesting evidence that you can say a lot about. Remember, you want to be able to layer wherever you can. Name and analyse techniques. We're not just technique spotting, so just naming them is not enough. Analyse language choice, even if you've commented on a structural or a form technique. So zoom in on a word, even if you're talking about something else. So that's where we double up. Link back to the poet's message and intention. Link to the effect on the reader wherever you feel it is necessary. Link to context only if it's relevant and appropriate, and use academic phrases throughout just to help you develop your response. So thank you very much for taking part in this lesson. I hope the 2 parts have helped you to kind of move through from the planning stage into writing up a successful answer. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. Bye bye.